20 EXP failed, but the poor cleaning lady solved it in 1 minute. What made the Millionaire CEO freeze in shock? No one noticed her at first, just a woman in worn-out sneakers wiping floors beneath a glowing whiteboard that had stumped 20 of the country's top engineers. She paused, tilted her head, then with one red marker, she solved it. In under a minute. What she didn't see, standing behind the glass wall, was Richard Carter, billionaire CEO of Carter Tech, watching her in stunned silence. She was just the janitor. Until that night, when everything changed. What happens when power notices the unseen? She doesn't know he saw. He doesn't know what to feel. Who is she really, and what will he do next? She always kept one earbud in, the other ear open. Not for safety, for survival. That way she could hear them, the suits, the stress, the chaos behind boardroom glass. Her name was Valentina Ramirez. Age 28. Janitor. Dreamer. She had 2 things to her name, a mop cart with one squeaky wheel and a mind that never stopped solving. That night she was cleaning the 12th floor again. The glass floor, they called it, where men in expensive shoes argued about formulas, funding, futures. It was always cold there, always tense, like money could freeze the air. She dragged the mop quietly past the war room. That's what they called the boardroom when things got ugly. She heard yelling, equations, curses. Someone said, "This variable's killing the model. We're going to lose the whole investor pitch." Then silence. Then doors slamming. She waited. When they were gone, she slipped in. Not because she was nosy, but because she always cleaned in silence, and silence has a way of revealing secrets. There, on the board, lines and loops of unsolved thought. 20 people had tried. All of them failed? She stared. And for one long minute, the world disappeared. Her hand moved. A substitution, a diagonal, a flipped sign. That was the sound in her head when it made sense. That quiet click that used to come back in college, before life pulled her out. "It's done," she whispered, half joking, half shocked. She winked at her mop like she always did after a small win. But this time, it was no small win. Behind her, a voice steady and low cut through the stillness. She froze. He was tall and still, dressed in black and gray. Richard Carter, founder of Carter Tech, known for firing people with a look. His tone wasn't angry. He was stunned. "Was it you?" he asked again. She pointed to the mop. "Maria Clara did it." He didn't blink. "Just kidding," she muttered. "It was me." He stepped forward. Not furious, just curious. "You know what this means?" She shrugged. "Maybe that janitors should be allowed to try once in a while." He didn't laugh, but his eyes didn't leave her. She crossed her arms, defensive, casual. "Where do you learn this?" "Engineering school, 2 years. Then my mom got sick, couldn't finish, couldn't afford it. Guess you wouldn't know how that feels, being rich and all." Something flickered in his expression. Not offense, something else. "Respect? You're funny," he muttered. "I'm a janitor," she smiled. "Being funny is how I survive." Then she reached for the cloth, ready to erase the board. "Don't," he said quickly. "I want the team to see this tomorrow." She tilted her head. "You want me in the meeting too?" "Yes." She blinked. "Well, only if I can bring my mop. He gets jealous." And he, the man who hadn't smiled in months, almost did. She walked out, cart squeaking down the hallway like always. But behind her, he just stood there, staring at a red-marked equation like it had just rewritten the rules of his world. And maybe it had, because she didn't just clean the floors that night. She rearranged everything: logic, power, perception, and maybe even his heart. Chapter 1. 1 minute that changed everything. The carpet still held the echoes of tension. You could feel it, like a storm that had passed but left the air heavy. Empty coffee cups, cold pizza, scribbled notebooks abandoned in defeat. Valentina stepped quietly into the war room. No one was supposed to be here after midnight, but no one ever noticed the janitor. Her fingers were dry from bleach, her back ached from the day shift. But her mind? It was still on. She stood still for a moment, mop leaning against her hip, eyes tracing the digital whiteboard. They didn't even wipe off their failure, she whispered. The formula glared back at her, cold, precise, mocking. She tilted her head slightly, took 2 steps forward, then 3 steps back. Her mother used to say Valentina's mind wasn't linear, it danced, like music. And sometimes math sang. That night, it did. Her hand moved on instinct, one red marker from the tray, a tiny substitution here, a diagonal shift there. Her breath hitched when she saw it. The answer, the elegant path no one else had seen. Click, she said softly, like a sound only she could hear. Done. She didn't know someone had been standing in the doorway. He had arrived quietly. Not even his shoes made a sound. The CEO always knew how to enter a room without warning. Richard Carter, age 34, CEO of Carter Tech, raised on precision, built on silence, wired to notice what others missed, and what he saw now stunned him. Solving what his engineers couldn't. "Who did this?" he said, the words sharper than intended. She jumped. Her hand knocked over the cloth bucket. Soapy water sloshed toward her shoes. "Maria Clara," she said, pointing to the mop. He didn't laugh. "It was me," she finally admitted, brushing damp curls from her face. He stepped closer. She held her ground. "You realize none of our consultants could find this." "Maybe they were too busy trying to look smart," she replied, then added, "Sorry, that was rude." "No, it was accurate." He studied her, like she was a code he'd never debugged. The red lines on the board, her tired face, her steady eyes. "Where did you learn this?" "University of Washington, engineering, 2 years." "Why do you leave?" "Life," she said. Silence. He waited, but she didn't elaborate. And he respected that. "Would you come to tomorrow's meeting?" he asked. She blinked. "You want me in a room full of suits and superiority? I want to hear what you saw, in your words." She hesitated, then shrugged. "As long as I can bring my mop, he's part of the process." He didn't smile, but his eyes did something. Softened, flickered. She wheeled the cart past him, humming as she went. "Good night, boss," she said casually. "Oh, and maybe try smiling. It won't kill you." "Probably." He turned back to the board after she left. He stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the equation like it had personally insulted him. Because it had exposed everything he thought was certain. And the woman who revealed it, I wasn't supposed to be capable of any of it. The next morning, the 9:00 a.m. meeting was standing room only. Directors, analysts, engineers. Every chair was taken, every tie was tight, every tablet was open. Then she walked in, blue janitor uniform, cart parked by the door, hair tied back, no makeup, just her. "Valentina." "Good morning," she said softly, waving at the mop. He's shy. A few nervous chuckles, but not from Richard. He gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Sit here." She sat, back straight, eyes forward. "Last night," he began, "this woman did what none of us could." He gestured toward the board. "We'd like to understand how." She exhaled. "Well, I don't know if I did it the scientific way. I just saw the mess and tried to clean it." Another laugh, this time from Arthur, the tech director. "No, really," she said. "It's like when you try 3 cleaning products on one stain and forget a damp cloth might do the trick." Heads turned. Minds opened. "You studied engineering?" someone asked. 2 years. I dropped out, tuition, family stuff, life happens." "But you kept learning?" "My mind never stopped," she said simply. "Only my bank account did." Silence. Arthur cleared his throat and held up her formula. "I reviewed her calculations. They're correct. More than that, they're efficient, smarter than our current protocol." A murmur ran through the room. She looked up, surprised. Her hand twitched toward the cloth on her lap. "I thought I broke something." "You didn't," Richard said. You simplified something we all overcomplicated. She shrugged. I'm good at spotting messes. He stood. What would you think about doing this more often? She raised an eyebrow. You want to promote me to logic cleansing janitor? Temporary observation assistant. You'd sit in, offer input if you'd like. Can I keep wearing my apron? If it helps you think? She smiled. It's survived at least 5 brainstorms. It's earned its place. And just like that, the meeting ended. Not with numbers, but with something new. Respect. As she rolled her cart down the hall that day, something felt different. People moved out of her way. Not with pity, not with dismissal, with recognition. And Richard? He stayed behind in the boardroom, alone again. But something had shifted inside him, and he didn't quite know why. Her absence suddenly felt louder than any investor meeting. What if the smartest person in the room never gets a seat at the table, until the janitor pulls up a chair? Chapter 2. The Janitor in the Boardroom. Valentina didn't sleep that night. Not because she was nervous, more than hate, because for the first time in years, someone had asked her to speak. Not mop, not clean, but speak. The badge clipped to her apron still read Facilities Support, and her shoes were still held together with glue. But that morning she took an extra second in the mirror, not for vanity, just to remind herself, you earned that seat. Downstairs, her mother packed her a lunch. Nothing fancy, just a turkey sandwich wrapped in foil and a quiet prayer tucked between the napkins. You sure you'll be okay? Her mother asked gently. It's just one meeting, Mummy. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just anything. Carter Tech 12th floor boardroom. The room was already full. A sea of gray suits, clicking tablets, whispered bets about what the CEO would say. Arthur Lynn leaned toward Rachel. This better not be a publicity stunt. Rachel raised an eyebrow. She solved what you couldn't. We were under pressure. Oh, was she? She had a mop in one hand. Just then the glass door opened, and in walked the one person no one expected to see in this sacred space. Valentina Ramirez, in her blue uniform, a shy smile and eyes that scanned every face in the room. She pushed her cart just past the threshold, then paused. Mind if I leave this by the door? She asked, half joking. He gets nervous in crowds. A laugh rippled. One of the interns even smiled. But not everyone was amused. Is this standard now? Whispered one director. Richard Carter didn't respond. He simply gestured to the seat beside him. Not at the end, not in the corner. Beside him. And she took it. A meeting. The whiteboard lit up with the problem from last night. The unsolved model. The one she had scribbled through with a red marker like it was spilled soup. Richard stood at the head of the room. What you're about to see isn't a patch, it's a pivot. He nodded to Valentina. She stood, slowly, wrung her fingers together for 1 second, then remembered her mother's napkin prayer and let go. Okay, so, she began, I'm not here to teach you the math, you already know it. But maybe you've been looking at it like a window that only opens one way. She turned to the board. I looked at this the way I look at a coffee stain. Doesn't matter where it came from. What matters is how to lift it. She tapped the first error. This was overcalculated. You looped back too many times, trying to impress the algorithm. Murmurs, scribbles, eyes widened. I simplified it, not to dumb it down, just to get rid of the noise. Silence. And then Arthur leaned forward. She's not wrong. The energy in the room shifted. The tension cracked open. She smiled slightly. Sometimes, it's not about finding a new formula. It's about remembering what the old ones were trying to say. Someone clapped. Then another. Even Reg. But the look he gave her wasn't just admiration. It was something else. Like he was trying to map a puzzle he never thought he'd care about until she walked in. Later that day, break room. Valentina was wiping the counter when Rachel walked in. Hey, she said, you handle that room like a pro. You mean I didn't faint? Valentina joked. You made half the room rethink their PhDs. Rachel leaned on the counter. There's a team dinner tomorrow night, no pressure, but Valentina blinked. Me? At a tech team dinner? We're not asking you to solve world peace. Just show up. Valentina hesitated. Please. I don't own anything fancier than this apron. Good. We're sick of suits anyway. Elsewhere, Richard's office. He was staring out the window, the skyline blurred by glass and thought. Arthur walked in. You'd been quiet. She changed the entire protocol and made the team laugh while doing it. Arthur paused. She's not just sharp, Richard. She's clear. That's rarer. Richard didn't respond, but his fingers tapped the desk, a rhythm he only used when his mind was racing. What are you thinking? Arthur finally asked. I'm thinking, Richard said slowly, that sometimes the truth doesn't come from the top of the resume pile. That night, Valentina's home. She stood in front of the closet, 2 shirts, 1 sweater, and a pair of borrowed heels that pinched just from looking at them. Her little sister Sophia peeked in. You're gonna be late. I don't even know if I belong there. You belong wherever you make people think, Sophia replied. Valentina looked at herself in the mirror. Hair down, a hint of mascara, a small twist of purple earrings her neighbor lent her. Be honest, she asked. Do I look like someone who knows what she's doing? You look like someone they'll never forget. The team dinner, downtown Seattle. The restaurant was dimly lit. Cloth napkins, waiters in black. Valentina stepped through the doors, and the room fell quiet. Not from judgment, but awe. The girl in the cleaning apron had just become the most luminous woman in the room. Even Richard, seated at the end of the table, blinked like someone had dropped ice into his glass. She sat down between Rachel and Arthur. Sorry if I overdressed, she said. All I have at home with heels are my brooms. The table laughed. Except Richard. He just watched her, like he was afraid to look too long, or not long enough. Toward the end, as plates cleared and drinks were poured, Valentina told stories from her janitor shifts. Once I walked into the wrong room and nearly swept through a live investor presentation. Noontime, I caught 2 engineers hiding donuts under the server desk. You'd think they were storing gold. The team laughed like they hadn't in months. Even the quietest ones were leaning in. And Richard wasn't just leaning. He was listening to her voice, her rhythm, her realness. Something inside him cracked open. Not dramatically, just enough to feel the air rush in. As Valentina stood to leave, she passed by his chair. Paused. Thanks for inviting me. He nodded. Tomorrow morning, I'll be back, with the mop and all. Maybe another equation too, if my brain behaves. He wanted to say something more, but didn't. And when the door closed behind her, all he could do was stare at the empty space she left behind. Like she'd just rewritten the rules of his world. Again, what if the people we overlook are the ones who see us most clearly? Chapter 3. The floor is just the start. The next morning at Carter Tech looked the same. Polished glass, hushed voices, shoes that clicked like certainty, but something felt different. Somewhere between the corporate buzz and clinking mugs, a single sound stood out. The soft hum of a woman pushing a cleaning cart. She wasn't late. She wasn't early. She was just there, moving through the hall like she always had. Only now, people noticed. I noticed how she spoke to the fern near the water cooler. You look happier today. Did someone water you finally? Noticed how her mop never squeaked when she cleaned? She moved with rhythm, precision, like she was solving an equation beneath every footprint. And Richard? He noticed everything. Conference room, 10:30 a.m. Another meeting, another technical snag. Arthur stood with a dry erase marker in hand, eyebrows knitted together. The model keeps failing this particular vector. Valentina, seated quietly near the back, still in uniform, tilted her head. What if you replaced the vector with a fixed set? Less fluctuation, fewer fails. Silence. Arthur paused, typed on his tablet. A green checkmark blinked onto the screen. It's worked, again, he said, half laughing. Eyes turned to her. She shrugged lightly. I just thought, if the sink clogs in the same spot, You don't pour more water, you change the pipe, right? Someone laughed. Someone else clapped. Richard didn't say a word. But his eyes didn't leave her. Break room, lunch. Valentina stood in line at the vending machine, eyeing a stale tuna wrap. Rachel appeared beside her, sipping something overpriced and green. Word is, you've fixed 3 models in 2 days. They were half fixed already, Valentina said. I just noticed what didn't belong. Rachel smiled. You're good at that. At occasion things? At seeing what others skip. Valentina shrugged. That's what cleaning teaches you. You find what people pretend not to leave behind. The elevator incident. That afternoon, Richard stepped into the elevator just as Valentina turned the corner with her cart. Their eyes met. She paused. He didn't. The door started to close. She waved her cloth. I know that look. You want me to pretend I didn't see you. He reached out and held the door. Get in. She did. The elevator began to rise, then jolted. Flickered. It stopped. Silence. No way, she whispered. You've got to be kidding me. Richard pressed the emergency button. Nothing. Pulled out his phone, no signal. Perfect, she sighed, sliding to the floor. I'm becoming an expert in odd situations with you. He didn't smile. Not yet. You okay? He asked. I'm fine. You're the one who looks like he's fighting off a full-on anxiety attack. He leaned against the mirrored wall, jaw tight. I don't like surprises. No kidding. Silence again. But not the awkward kind. The almost kind. The kind filled with things neither wanted to name. So, she said finally, why are you really always so tight? Like emotionally? I grew up in a house where a 90 wasn't enough, he said flatly. If I won something, my father asked why I didn't win too. Sounds exhausting. It was normal. She nodded, eyes soft. My mom raised 2 daughters, worked 3 houses, and still had enough energy to laugh. That was normal too. He turned to her. You dropped out to care for her? She got sick. My sister was still in school. I had to. That's noble. It wasn't noble. It was necessary. She looked away, tracing circles on the floor with her toe. We don't always choose the fight, but we do get to choose if we stay knocked down. Richard stared at her like he was seeing the word grace for the first time. You're different, he said quietly. Is that bad? No, it's just not what I'm used to. A long silence. Then she smiled. Want to hear about the last time I was stuck in an elevator? There was a live chicken involved. He chuckled. The real kind, not the boardroom smirk. Okay, that's a story I want to hear. By the time the elevator rebooted and they stepped out onto the 12th floor, something between them had shifted. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was knowing that sometimes a man frozen in his own success and a woman forgotten by the system can meet in a broken elevator and realize maybe the floor isn't where things end. Maybe it's just where everything starts. What if the walls we build to protect us are the same ones that keep the right person out? Chapter 4, The Purple Dress. Valentina hadn't worn a dress in 3 years. Not since her cousin's baby shower. Not since before her mother got sick. Not since the day she dropped out of engineering school and packed her dreams into the back of a closet next to a box of textbooks and hope. Now here she was, standing in her tiny bedroom, holding a dress the color of dusk, purple, soft, and quiet. A gift from Mrs. Lucia, the neighbor who claimed it once got her a marriage proposal back in 1982. Just try it on, Lucia said, handing over a matching pair of earrings. You'll see. And when Valentina stepped into it, zipper up the back, hair let down, breath held. She didn't become someone else. She simply returned to someone she hadn't been in a very long time. Downtown Seattle, Carter Tech dinner. The restaurant was low-lit. Smooth jazz filtered through warm air. Waiters in crisp black uniforms weaved between tables, balancing wine and worry. Rachel was the first to notice her. Is that Valentina? Arthur followed her gaze. She looks, wow. The purple dress hugged gently, Her curls framed her face, loose and shining. She had no purse, just confidence and a little smile. And Richard looked up mid-conversation and forgot what he was saying. She was walking toward the team table, gently brushing past strangers, her stride not perfect, but purposeful. He couldn't speak. She waved lightly. "I hope I'm not too overdressed," she said, trying to sound breezy. "I couldn't find my mop, so I brought heels instead." Laughter broke the tension, but Richard didn't laugh. He just stared. The table. Dinner was loud. Laughter came easy. Even the interns opened up around her. Valentina didn't dominate the room, she illuminated it. She told stories about cleaning the server room while engineers ran simulations. She shared how she once mistook the CFO's office for the janitor closet and nearly left a bucket in there for 3 days. And everyone laughed like they hadn't in months. Except Richard. He sat quietly, sipping whiskey, stealing glances. She didn't know this, but he hadn't stopped thinking about her since the elevator. Something about her had unlocked something in him, a softness he didn't trust. Later that night, the team was wrapping up. Checks were paid, coats were grabbed, hugs exchanged. Valentina stood to leave and turned toward Richard. "Thanks for inviting me," she said, unsure of what this was. "Thank you for coming. Tomorrow, I'll be back in the uniform," she added, almost apologetically. He looked at her then, really looked. "Wear whatever helps you think best." She nodded, a small smile, but something in her eyes said, "Say something more." He didn't. She walked out. Outside, curbside. She stepped into the rain without an umbrella, the purple dress catching droplets like tiny stars. Rachel ran out behind her. "Wait, do you need a ride?" "Nah," Valentina smiled. "I'll take the bus." "I'm still me." Rachel hugged her. "You were amazing tonight." "Thanks, but tomorrow, I'll be invisible again." "Not to everyone." Valentina didn't ask what she meant. She didn't need to. She knew. Back inside, Richard alone. He lingered by the table, hands in pockets, eyes still on the door she had exited through. Arthur approached. "You gonna say something one of these days?" "About what?" "You tell me." Richard looked down, sighed. "She's not part of this world." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe she's the only part that makes sense." That night, Valentina walked home. Hair soaked, shoes blistered, but heart beating louder than usual. She didn't know what was happening. Not with the team, not with Richard, not with herself. But she did know this. That night, in a room full of analysts and engineers, she hadn't tried to impress anyone. And yet, he couldn't stop looking. What if the most beautiful thing about you is that you never needed to change? Chapter 5. Elevator Confessions. She didn't plan to see him that morning. Valentina was in her usual uniform, earbuds in, humming something upbeat while cleaning the chrome railing near the elevators on the 12th floor. The hallway was mostly empty, just the usual hum of fluorescent lights and quiet footsteps behind glass doors. The elevator dinged. She turned casually, and there he was. Richard Carter. Blue tie, crisp collar, tablet in hand. Focused. Fast. She took a half step back, instinctively ready to let him pass. But instead, he paused. "Going up?" he asked. She blinked. "Is that a joke or a metaphor?" He gave the smallest of smiles. "Just a question." She pushed her cart aside and stepped in. The door slid closed. Now for the second time in a week, they were alone. Inside the elevator. Silence stretched between them. Not tense, not awkward, just full. "You seem different today," Richard said, watching the numbers tick upward. "Must be the new lavender disinfectant," Valentina replied, not missing a beat, testing to see if it calms nervous people in elevators. He chuckled lightly, but then paused. "No, it's you. You seem more serious?" Her voice softened. "Sometimes I am. That's when the world feels heavier than usual." Before he could ask more, the elevator jolted. Once. Twice. Then, nothing. The lights flickered. The panel went dark. "Oh, come on," Valentina muttered. "Not again." Richard pressed the emergency button. No response. Pulled out his phone. No signal. "Looks like we're stuck." She slid to the floor, letting her back rest against the cool metal wall. "Perfect. I'm becoming an expert in weird situations with you. Does this happen often?" "No, but when it does, you're usually around." He gave a tight smile, sitting opposite her. Small confessions. They sat in the quiet hume of machinery. Two people. Both worn thin in different ways. "You don't like surprises," she observed. "I'm the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech company," he said. "Surprises mean mistakes. Mistakes cost millions." She studied him for a second. "Must be exhausting." He didn't reply. "You always this tight?" she asked, voice gentle. "I grew up in a house where emotions were like clutter. Clean lines, clean records, clean walls. And no space for feelings. Only results." The wound. He looked down at his hands. "My mother died when I was 8. My father raised me, with performance reviews for every aspect of life." She stayed quiet. Got a 90, he'd ask why it wasn't 100. Won an award, he'd ask if it was the biggest. "So you became the best, but not the happiest." He looked up. "Exactly." Her turn. Valentina pulled her legs in. "My mom worked herself into the ground. Seamstress by day, caregiver by night. Laughed through exhaustion. I dropped out of college to take care of her and my sister." "Fine. That must have been hard." "It was worse being invisible. You do everything right, but if you wear a janitor's badge, no one sees you." He looked at her, not at her uniform, at her. "I saw you," he said, "only after I solved something no one else could." "No," he said firmly. "I saw you before that. I just didn't realize what I was seeing." Their eyes held for a beat too long. The almost. She leaned her head back, closing her eyes. "Funny how we rush through life and then a stuck elevator teaches us more than years of meetings." "Maybe pauses teach more than plans," he murmured. She turned her head slightly toward him. "You're learning." He gave a soft laugh. Then quieter. "You make me think about things I usually avoid." "Like what?" "Like who I could have been if I ever stopped to breathe." She scooted slightly closer, not touching, just sharing warmth. "Maybe there's still time." He stared at her. The flickering light cast soft shadows across her cheekbones, her eyes. Calm and steady. He leaned in. So did she. Breath mingled. Fingers twitched. The heartbeat in the gap between two people and everything they hadn't said. And just then, the elevator lights returned. "Elevator in operation," said the robotic voice. They froze. Valentina stepped back, fixing her hair quickly. "Wow," she whispered. "Talk about a ruined movie moment." Richard cleared his throat and stood. "Looks like we're moving again." They didn't speak for the rest of the ride. But the silence was different now. Not empty. Ever, just unresolved. When the doors opened, they stepped out side by side. Nothing was said, but something had begun. Not romance. Not friendship. Recognition. The kind that lingers long after the moment ends. The kind that waits, quietly, for the next time two lives collide. What if the person who truly understands you is the one you never thought would stay long enough to listen? Chapter 6. The Scandal. For a while, everything felt possible. Valentina moved through Carter Tech like someone learning to breathe again. She still wore her cleaning uniform, still pushed her cart. But now, people nodded, smiled, listened. She didn't ask for recognition, but she earned it anyway. The back of the office echoed again every meeting she joined. Faster progress, better questions, unexpected clarity. And Richard? He still wore his armor, but sometimes in the quiet he'd let it slip. One smile, one longer glance, one unspoken thought held too long between them. But then, it happened. The headline. It started with a buzz in the hallway, then a ping in the group chat, then chaos. A tech gossip blog leaked it first. Scandal at Carter Tech. Cleaning lady works on billion-dollar AI project without degree. Her photo, in uniform, mid-sentence at a whiteboard, was everywhere within hours. The caption beneath it? No PhD, no credentials, just a mop and a smile. Meet the janitor solving equations at Carter Tech. It spread like fire. Within minutes, she was a meme. Mocked, admired, ripped apart. In the break room, Valentina was wiping down a countertop when she overheard it. Did you see the cleaning lady genius thing? Crazy, right? She turned. An intern was scrolling through his phone, laughing. Her face, right there, framed in sarcasm. She said nothing, just walked slowly to the locker room, stared at herself in the mirror. Still the same face, still the same woman, but now, a punchline in the meeting room. She entered to find Rachel, Arthur, and 3 analysts whispering. They stopped talking the moment she stepped in. She looked at them, eyes steady. You all know I'm here, right? At least wait until I'm out of the room before you start talking about me. Silence. Heavy, humiliating. Richard's office, minutes later. Richard was standing, phone to ear, voice hard. Take it down, every unauthorized photo, every headline, I want the leak traced. He turned as she walked in. Valentina, I'm fixing it, this is slander. Don't. He froze. You don't need to protect me. I'm not protecting you. I didn't get here because someone gave me permission. I got here because I earned it. Her voice cracked, just once. But I expected that inside these walls, things would be different. The goodbye. She took off her badge, set it on the desk. I need time. Please, don't make this harder. He stared at the badge like it had weight, like it could crush him. You deserve better, he whispered. Then respect me when I say this. I don't want to be the janitor's success story. I want to be seen for my mind, not the uniform I wear. And then, she walked out. No dramatics, no tears. Just gone. The days after, the office felt quieter. Meetings dragged, progress slowed. The fern near the water cooler wilted. Richard noticed. He walked past her usual spot. Twice. 3 times. No mop. No earbuds. No smile. And suddenly, all the air in Carter Tech felt heavy again. He couldn't sleep. Couldn't think. He missed her. Not the solutions. Valentina had survived worse. But this time hurt deeper. Because it came from people who said she mattered and acted like she didn't. She didn't leave because she was weak. She left because even strong people deserve dignity. And no matter how brilliant her mind was, the world still saw the apron before the answer. What if the moment you're finally seen is the same moment the world tries to erase you? If Chapter 7, no more floors to clean. It had been 3 days. No calls, no emails, not even a text. Richard kept checking anyway. Every hour he passed her old cleaning route. The floor sparkled, but it felt wrong. Like light without warmth. The mop wasn't there. The soft humming, the quiet hum of her cartwheels. She was gone. And everything felt off. Carter Tech, the silence. The second floor's hallway, once filled with unexpected laughter, was now just hallway. Meetings dragged. Whiteboards stayed mostly blank. Arthur tried to joke about it once, but the punchline landed flat. Even the plants looked tired. Richard noticed. Everyone did. But no one said her name. The drive. On the 4th day, Richard couldn't take it anymore. He canceled his meetings, got in his black BMW, and drove. He didn't have a plan, just an address, one he'd once quietly asked HR for but never dared use. Until now. Valentina's home. It was a narrow street lined with color and life. Children playing with sticks. Dogs barking from behind chain fences. A smell of garlic and something fried floating through the air. He parked in front of a small green gate, unsure. Then the door opened. A woman with silver in her bun and warm eyes stepped outside with a watering can. "Can I help you?" she asked. I'm Richard Carter, he said, suddenly awkward. I work with Valentina. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're the CEO. Yes. She's not home. Could you let her know I came by? The woman, Elena, studied him. Quiet. Steady. My daughter's strong, but she has a soft heart. If she's not talking to you, it's because she's hurting. Richard nodded. I made a mistake. Then don't wait for time to fix it, Elena said gently. Go fix it yourself. That night, Richard tried calling, straight to voicemail. He sat down and opened his laptop. Typed, deleted, typed again. Eventually, he sent just this. Valentina, I know I don't deserve your time right now, but I need you to know that what happened between us meant something, and the way I handled it after was cowardly. I'll be giving the keynote at the Tech Future Seattle event. If nothing else, please come. You deserve to see the recognition for the work you helped build. Richard. Her reply next morning. Just 2 words. I'm not going. It cut deeper than silence. The day of the conference. Richard dressed in navy, the kind of navy she once teased him about. The conference hall buzzed with press, investors, tech giants. He should have felt powerful. Instead, he felt hollow. He clicked through the opening slides. The lights dimmed. The host stepped up. Please welcome the CEO of Carter Tech, Richard Carter. Applause. He walked to the podium. The crowd waited. He looked out over hundreds of expectant eyes and forgot every word. On the live stream. At home, Valentina sat with her little sister, Sophia. The event played on her laptop. Is he okay? Sophia asked. He's nervous, Valentina whispered. Richard stared at the screen. The slides blurred, his voice faltered. Sorry, he said into the mic, let me collect myself. He looked like a man about to drown. Sophia turned to Valentina. Yeah, what? You can still make it. Valentina stared at the screen, at the man who once stood like steel, now breaking, publicly. You love him, don't you? Valentina didn't answer. She just grabbed her keys and ran. The arrival. She entered through a side door, out of breath, hair hastily pulled back. He saw her from stage and froze. She didn't make a scene, just gave a small nod. He nodded back. And then, everything changed. The real presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard said, steadier now. Sometimes, even the best tech in the world is meaningless if you can't explain it in human terms. He smiled at her, really smiled. And then, for the next 30 minutes, he channeled her. He used kitchen metaphors, plant analogies, soft jokes. And the crowd leaned in. By the end, people were clapping on their feet. He turned toward her as the applause rose. She nodded and mouthed, "Now that's a smile." Backstage, after the lights dimmed, she waited. He found her near a hallway window. "You came," he said. "You needed a backup presenter," she teased. "I needed you." He paused. "You're the only person who's ever made me want to be more human." She didn't answer. She just looked at him with something between sorrow and hope. And in that pause, they both knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of what might finally be real. What if the person you walk away from is the only one who would have waited for you to come back? Chapter 8, the $50 million 0-cents pitch. She had never stood in a room like this before. Wall-to-wall investors. It's worth more than her entire apartment. Voices trained to doubt, to dissect, to dismiss. But Valentina stood tall. Not in heels, not in armor. In truth, Azer. Her name stitched on a plain tag. Hair pulled back, heart racing, but steady. And Richard? He stood in the corner. Not as her boss, but as her anchor. "Good morning," she began, her voice quiet but clear. "I know you're used to data sheets and polished jargon, but today I want to explain our project like I would explain it to my mother." In a pause. Then, because if you can't explain something to the woman who raised 2 daughters with a sewing machine and faith, then maybe you don't understand it at all. The room blinked, then listened. The pitch. She used metaphors. She compared AI learning to how her little sister learned to cross the street. Not just knowing the light, but sensing the rhythm. She used stories about how some systems break, not because they're wrong, but because no one bothers to fix what seems beneath them. She used clarity, because understanding isn't a badge. It's a bridge. And one by one, hardened faces softened. Richard watched, frozen, not with fear, with awe. The turning point. When she reached the conclusion, she looked up. Eyes steady. Breath calm. Our system doesn't just follow code, it understands context. Like someone who's lived enough to know when to follow rules and when to rewrite them. Silence. Then, one lead investor stood. Ms. Ramirez, in 20 years of tech investing, I've never seen someone explain complexity with such heart and intelligence. He turned to Richard. We're prepared to offer $50 million. The room gasped. Valentina blinked, then smiled, slowly, beautifully. Aftermath. Back in the office, the energy was electric. Arthur high-fived Rachel. Engineers cheered. The cleaning staff clapped when they saw her. She walked through it all quietly. Still the same woman, but no longer invisible. Richard found her by the window. You did that. We did. No, he said. You did. She smiled. You're smiling again. Because for the first time, everything makes sense. She didn't change to fit their world. She invited them into hers. And they came, not because she begged, but because her clarity was impossible to ignore. She had cleaned their floors. Now she was cleaning their vision. What if the most powerful person in the room is the one no one expected to speak? Chapter 9. The Rejection. The office felt different. Not just because of the $50 million, 0 cents. Not because of the media buzz or the congratulatory emails flooding in. It felt different because for the first time in her life, Valentina belonged. Or so she thought. The morning after, she came in early, right on, steady. Wearing the same blazer Rachel had lent her, still hanging fresh with hope. She passed engineers who now nodded with admiration. Not pity, not amusement, respect. Then she saw him, Richard, down the hall. Clipboard, calm, focused. She smiled, but when their eyes met, he didn't. Oh! He looked away and kept walking. The meeting. They were reviewing next steps for implementation. Valentina sat across from him. Not too close, not too far. Waiting for a glance, a word, a smile. Nothing. He answered her questions like she was a vendor. Cold, precise, unfamiliar. Richard, she said after the meeting, can we talk about the rollout? He didn't look up. Pass your notes to Arthur. He'll handle it. Okay, but I thought... That's the proper protocol now. Proper protocol. It echoed like a slap. That afternoon, she sat alone in the break room, staring out at the same skyline where they once shared quiet jokes and awkward almosts. Now it felt like a memory she wasn't allowed to touch anymore. She didn't cry, but she felt everything. And it hurt. Not because he rejected her love, but because he rejected the truth of what they'd built. The decision. The next morning, she walked into his office. No hesitation. Just heartbreak wrapped in dignity. She set an envelope on his desk. What's this? My resignation. He looked up. Stunned. What? Why? Because I won't stay where I'm treated like a mistake you're trying to undo. Valentina, you kissed me. You leaned in, you let me in. She held his gaze, calm but breaking. Then you froze, and I realized I was just a moment you wish hadn't happened. He stood, but she was already at the door. Night meant something to me, she said, voice barely holding, but I guess it was just a glitch in your perfect system. She laughed. Again, but this time, for real. Richard, he stared at the resignation letter. Small, quiet, brutal. He didn't chase her, didn't stop her. He sat there, a man who had once run global companies, now unable to take one honest step toward the woman who had saved them all. Sometimes the cruelest thing isn't what someone says, it's what they don't say. She didn't need a title. She didn't need a ring. She just needed someone who wouldn't hide from something real. But he did, and now she was gone. What if your silence is the one thing they'll never forgive? Chapter 10. When a CEO breaks. Where silence becomes confession, fear turns to truth, and a cold-hearted CEO finally learns what it means to feel. The final proposal is not just romantic, it's redemptive. 3 days. That's how long it took before the shine of the $50 million 0-cents deal began to fade. Valentina was gone, and with her, the clarity. Richard walked through Carter Tech like a man who couldn't hear the music anymore. The meetings ran, the charts clicked, the plans moved forward, but none of it felt right. He watched a team presentation in silence, half listened, half present, entirely lost. The plant. It was Thursday afternoon when he passed the water cooler and saw it. The fern, wilted, dull. No one had talked to it. No one had cared. He stood there for a moment, motionless, then whispered, "He told you this would happen?" And for the first time in months, he laughed. But the sound was empty. The presentation. The next morning, he stood backstage at the Tech Future Seattle conference. Hundreds of investors, millions at stake, and one man who couldn't stop thinking about the girl who used to mop that hallway and smile at the walls. "You ready?" Arthur asked gently. "No. You've given 100 presentations. I've never done one without her." On stage. He clicked to the first slide. He cleared his throat. Our system uses adaptive learning to process. He stopped. The words dissolved on his tongue. The crowd murmured. A few raised eyebrows. A whisper of embarrassment. He looked at the screen, then at the doors. She wasn't here. And suddenly, neither was he. Across town, Valentina was watching. Laptop open. Sophia beside her. She saw him freeze. "Is he choking?" Sophia asked. "No," Valentina said, slowly standing. "He's breaking." She grabbed her bag. "Where are you going?" "To see if he still remembers how to breathe." The moment. She arrived quietly. Jeans, t-shirt, hair in a low ponytail. No fanfare. Just presence. He saw her. Front row. No smile, no wave. Just eyes. Steady, soft, brave. He breathed in and began again. The real speech. "This isn't just tech. This is human. Because she made it human." He pointed to the diagrams. "I didn't build this alone. A woman named Valentina Ramirez taught me how to speak human, to explain AI like you'd explain a recipe to your mom, or a flower to a child." He paused. The crowd leaned in. "She used to clean these floors, now she cleans the way we think." A beat of silence. Then applause. Then more. A standing ovation. But he didn't smile at them. He only looked at her. The proposal. After the lights dimmed, he walked off stage. She was waiting. "You froze," she said. "I was waiting for you." "Why?" "Because when you left, everything stopped making sense." He stepped closer. "I spent my whole life building walls, but you made me want to open a door." Then he reached into his pocket. Small, velvet, shaking. "You changed me, Valentina." "Rich, let me finish." He knelt. "In front of everyone. You once cleaned my office, now you've cleaned my heart." Gasps, a few tears. "Will you marry me?" Her answer. She stared. Not shocked. She was quiet. Then smiled. "Only if you promise to water the plant." Laughter erupted. He laughed too. Relief, joy, love. He pulled him up, kissed him softly. And for the first time in his life, Richard Carter let go of everything, except her. She never asked for a spotlight. She just wanted to be seen. He never asked for a second chance, but she gave it anyway. Because sometimes love doesn't need permission. It just needs courage. What if the one person you thought was beneath you is the only one who ever saw the real you? Soap, equations, and love? The wedding wasn't in a cathedral, or a rooftop, or a vineyard booked months in advance. It was in her mother's backyard. Plastic chairs, homemade food, string lights hung from a crooked fence. The guest list? Strange, perfect blend of tech executives and neighbors who didn't own suits. Arthur gave a toast using a whiteboard. Rachel cried 3 times. Once during vows, twice when Valentina's mom kissed Richard on both cheeks. Richard stood at the altar in his classic navy blue suit. Valentina walked down the makeshift aisle in a dress she'd found at a vintage thrift store. Her hair was pinned up with a pencil. Because she liked it that way, he whispered as she reached him. "You look like a storm I never want to outrun." She smiled. "You still overthink metaphors." The vows. She didn't have hers written. He did. "You scrubbed more than floors," he said, voice cracking. "You scrubbed my walls, the ones I didn't even know I had." She took his hands. "You treated me like a formula at first," she said softly. "But over time, you learned to listen like a friend. And now you hold me like home. No orchestra, no choreographed dance. Just love, warm, messy, real." The company. They didn't launch another tech giant. They started Code from the Heart, a program that taught coding and AI to underprivileged kids from underfunded schools. Elena has been an international. Their first students were 2 kids from the same neighborhood Valentina grew up in. The first algorithm they wrote was called Plant Care _Valentina. It pinged reminders to water office plants with gentle affirmations. "Don't forget the fern, she misses her." The mirror. Years later, Richard stood in a hallway, watching her talk to a group of teens, all nervous, all hungry for opportunity. She wore jeans and a cleaning apron over her shoulder. "For luck," she said. He watched her laugh, and something inside him healed, again. Not because she was brilliant, but because she never tried to be anything but herself. She wasn't just the woman who once cleaned his office. She's the one who cleaned his heart. What if the person you overlook today is the one who will teach you how to feel tomorrow? If this story touched you, if it reminded you that love can rise from the quietest corners, there's another one waiting for you. The next story goes even deeper. See you there.